Passage.
Good morning. Hi, Jean.
Okay.
Hello. Demute myself.
We're going to give it just a few minutes for so everyone can join us as they're coming
Sure.
up at noon. Okay.
I'll be back.
Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute before folks start to come in here at the lunch hour on a Friday. Just give it one more minute. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Top of the afternoon to you. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining. I wanted to just introduce myself. Some of you have been on some of our Zooms and affiliated with the Community Foundation for a little while now, and I just want to say hello. My name's Jason. I'm the Director of Gift Planning and Stewardship here at the Chester County Community Foundation. And I'm going to talk to you about a really fun topic in the fundraising kind of industry overall. And it's on the topic of corporate sponsor fundraising, corporate fundraising, how to do it, how to engage the corporations that are here in the county and elsewhere in the region, and really try to figure out how to have a good relationship with them that will give your organization a large, impactful gift year after year. I have a number of years in fundraising, and I've worked with our local corporations here in Chester County, so I could share with you a little bit of my knowledge and experience. So wanted to get things moving along. So welcome. This is our agenda today. We have really two with some really helpful samples, and the samples are sort of like things for you to generate ideas in your various organizations. So the first is really to talk about America250, Chester County, give you an overview of that. Of course, we have the election days coming up very soon. And, Chester County 250 and America's birthday, the semi-quincentennial anniversary of our country will occur very soon. I mean, it's really within a year that we're going to see this. So exciting stuff to celebrate our shared history and heritage. The second agenda item here is really talking about corporate sponsorships, the types, the tips. I'll share with you a little bit of some trends that I know about, and really, again, it's idea sharing. If you have questions, certainly let me know. You could put it in the chat. You could blare it out, whatever you want to do. So idea sharing is most welcome in this session. So I don't think I have to tell you all that the 250 is coming. America's birthday, our shared heritage, as you know, really a nation of immigrants and folks really getting together to celebrate, long overdue, right? 250 years of our democracy. That is quite an accomplishment, and it'll be here before you know it. Did we say 2026? And of course, if you do the math, it's coming up very soon. To give you an idea about this, if you haven't heard about it already, this initiative, the Chester County Community Foundation's partnering with the County of Chester and the Regional Planning Commission of Chester County to really kind of raise awareness in a lot of our different communities here in the county about the county, its background, historical assets and treasures that are very much tied to the fabric of our country. And so, you know, at the local level, the county level, it's called Chester County 250. There's also a state initiative that you may have been kind of following on social media. They have a little bit of a cute mascot that goes around as well throughout the state. But that started several years ago, and they, you know, again, have the same task of raising awareness about how Pennsylvania really falls within the 250th anniversary of our country. And then there's a federal or national initiative regarding the 250 that's been around for some time now, probably close to 10 years in terms of planning, different celebrations that'll be occurring. And I can't forget, most importantly, the team at the Friends of Chester County, Friends of America 250 Chester County. This is sort of our role as project manager. You'll see some familiar names here. And our commission is spearheaded by Michelle Kickline, who's our honorary chair of the 250 Chester County Commission, and about over 30 members of historic preservationists and folks in our corporate community who are part of that commission, who meet frequently, quarterly. So that's to give you kind of like a background in terms of how the structure is set up. The goal is really this: it's to inspire, engage all communities about the celebration of America. And our aims here are really to kind of encounter the many ways in which Chester County, as I mentioned just before, participated and influenced our nation's founding, even after our nation's founding. Chester County, even some of the points in our region, were very impactful, even in the city of Philadelphia, where our founding fathers were. So it's sort of a regional kind of look when you look at the history and heritage of our great nation and how important that is. And then, of course, Chester County is blessed to sort of have a number of historical treasures and assets that are here that for the longest time, the county and many other groups wanted to protect and preserve as time has gone on. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But this is sort of the power of place. It's being inclusive. It's we the people as a phrase for this Chester County 250. The power of place, you were to think about Chester County, we have the great agricultural bounty in the western and southern part of our county. We have the iron and steel industry in Phoenixville and Coatesville. We have the Philadelphia campaign with the Brandywine battlefield and the Paoli battlefield and all those important battles that happened, Battle of the Clouds as well, during the fight for freedom before the signing of the Constitution. And then, of course, can't forget the pathway to freedom, the Underground Railroad movement that occurred in southern Chester County, in the Kennett area, and actually points north up to Chester Springs. Very, very important in terms of our nation's history. And it really, a lot of it occurred here in Chester County. So you could see how the county really wants to protect these historical assets and treasures as generations shift and people move on. It's really the American experience. It's unfinished revolutions. It's we the people, as I said earlier. So important for us to kind of hone in on what this initiative is. And then most importantly, working with the county, they have through their heritage office overlays overlays, as I mentioned, our agricultural bounty and natural landscape in Western Chester County, as I just mentioned. Iron and steel and industry, if you were to look at this in the Coatesville and Phoenixville area. The Philadelphia campaign, sort of in the mauve pink color. And then you've got the path to freedom here in the sort of the central part of the county, southern central. So it's really tying in these important historical treasures in terms of protecting them as time goes on. But it's in addition to heritage themes, it's about we the people. It's about Chester County being the fabric of American society. It's U.S. citizenship rights. It's citizenship responsibilities, who we are as citizens of this great nation. The right to express ourselves, the right to worship as we wish, to vote in elections for public officials. It's to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's to support and defend the Constitution. These are our roles as citizens of this great country. Something to think about, and certainly this time, given this sort of polarizing feeling that our society has, but it's really our shared responsibility to have these responsibilities as things move on with our country. So I want to talk to you, I want to segue into corporate giving. You may have seen this slide before, but it can definitely be applied to corporations. So I'm going to segue into sort of what is corporate giving? At first, really, it's about relationships. It's not being sort of transactional, and it's developing relationships with local corporations that can, as I mentioned in the beginning of this session, that will follow and continue, and hopefully the large amount of donations from the corporation will get bigger over time. Transformation that will help move your nonprofit mission forward. So it's people giving to people, mission alignment. It's people giving to causes they believe in. And most corporations tend to look closely at organizational leadership. How strong is that organizational leadership and team? What's the track record of the nonprofit? What's the market positioning? Kind of like what's in it for them. So it's that mission alignment. Over the last several decades, many corporations are starting to really focus on mission alignment. It's not so much, back 20 years ago where corporate gifts were just going to as a one-off to an organization. A lot of corporations now, these last 20 years, even longer, are starting to align their missions and kind of coming up with a strategy in terms of supporting charities. I can tell you that giving by corporations, so nonprofits receiving those gifts, have always been sort of flat, sort of like, certain percentage every year. If you were to look at the Giving USA report that comes out every June, that gives you sort of a snippet in terms of corporate giving. The projections that I'm seeing and the studies that are out there show that this year, corporate giving is estimated to increase by 2.5%. And the studies, which are pretty valid, are saying that the gross domestic product is going to increase, as well as the S&P 500. So giving those types of setups for this year, 2025, giving is sort of tracking to increase. And that's good news, because that sort of, you can tell your leadership at your nonprofits that you work with or volunteer with to say, you should really focus on corporate giving this year. And 2025 is the lead up to 250, 2026. So it's a good time to start planning for your organizations. I think, the question is, well, then how do corporations give? Like, give an idea to me, Jason, in terms of how it all starts. There's a number of different things. There's, for this slide, this shows you kind of like the basics, but it's corporate sponsorship possibilities. How can you gain a sponsorship gift from a corporation to support your mission? There's varying ways. Monetary, obviously, is first and foremost. donate a corporate grant. The corporation donates a corporate grant. And each year, the nonprofit visits the corporation every year to kind of revisit and explore renewal possibilities. So maybe it's for a golf outing, for example, and you're asking the corporation to give you an X amount for a sponsorship level. And you want to go to them next year and actually ask them for a bigger sponsorship, potentially for the next year. So it's cash, monetary sponsorships. There's in-kind donations as well. You know, for example, here, goods and services, building materials, auction items, printing, design. Heck, if you have a sort of a board member who's involved in a corporation, board members are really your first key. Look at those board members and see if they themselves work at a local corporation. But if you want to maybe kind of ask them if they could look into their network and see if there's corporations that they could introduce you to, because they could help you. They could even help you build a new website. I was fortunate to be a part of an organization where a board member who served at a local worked at a local financial services company got his team involved in a volunteer role to help the organization revamp the website, which was very much needed, to come up with a really great product that's still in operation today. And the amount that was tacked on in kind was about $20,000. So it saved the nonprofit a lot of money to be able to kind of get the team of employees at this company to really focus on the website and meet with us to sort of see how this website would go. So that's an example, but it's in kind. Even if you have an attorney on your board, they may want to look at your legal documents, what have you. But those are some examples. Media and marketing support. If you have a marketing committee of your board, or just an overall marketing committee that works with your development committee, they could provide some marketing support. They could sort of introduce you to, say, a local PR firm or a marketing firm that could do some pro bono in-kind work for you to promote your mission. So that's another way that, that they could help you there. There's, and this kind of goes into some of our other topic later, other slide, is employee-oriented efforts. As corporations are starting to get more organized with their giving, a lot of it is part of volunteerism. So getting the employees involved with the organization or nonprofit is number one. If there is an avenue and they have an interest, the corporations that is, they want to get their employees involved, number one. That's the first step before you're sort of considered for a grant, majority of times, or a gift. A lot of them have employee giving programs. I know that I worked for an organization once that had an employee giving program that you could support through different funds internally. But we were also encouraged to support the American Heart Association, the Gift of Life program, and United Way of Greater Philadelphia. So that's sort of the structure there in terms of employee-oriented efforts in a corporation. And there's also employer matching gift programs. If you know that you have a good relationship with a donor and a donor gives you, say, $1,000 for their annual gift. If you know that they work at a local corporation, be a sleuth and Google that corporation and just see if they have a corporate giving program, because they may have a match opportunity. So where the corporation will match the $1,000. So you're maximizing the philanthropy here to $2,000. Some corporations may actually max 4 to 1 in a ratio. So a good way to kind of incentivize your donor through their work at a local corporation. And I do want to say that some corporations actually have initiatives for former employees, where the former employees will get matched as well. It's not as prevalent as full-time employees, but that's out there too for your giving efforts. So hopefully that's helpful. There's corporate grants as well. We'll talk about that in a little bit, where you send a proposal to the corporation for requesting funding, and it's based on the grant cycle or schedule of the corporation. Sponsorships, as we talked about, is another thing that's sort of tied to the corporation's marketing budget. So something to think about in terms of structure with corporate giving for your nonprofit. I'd say for this slide, you certainly want to kind of, think about how to secure a corporate sponsorship if you haven't thought about doing this already, if you haven't done it. You want to first, think about, setting sponsorship levels, doing some research out there in terms of, identifying first a good 15 nonprofits. I made some notes here, 10 to 15 nonprofits that you want to kind of look at as well-respected companies in the area that have a local community tie and that align with your mission. That's number one. And so as you're setting sponsorship opportunities, you could kind of maybe do some more Googling or research to kind of see what these corporations like to support. Maybe did they support a local chamber's gala or event? And how much was that? Can you find that out? And then really start setting the dollar amounts for your sponsorship levels. So it's really going to kind of take some research for you to kind of look at in terms of setting up these sponsorship levels to then be able to kind of provide to these corporations. Of course, it's your website, your calling cards, your website, having that easy for people to see is a sponsorship webpage. Coming up with maybe a sponsorship menu of opportunities set forth by the certain dollar amount, like what are the benefits for a $2,500 sponsorship for the golf outing or your fundraising event or your gala. As I mentioned, research and reach out. I think that really, in my view, is number one. And then it's, once you're ready and you've talked to your board members and seeing if there's a connection there, it's go time. It's ready to go and have a conversation, whether it's just calling the corporate contact up and trying to have a meeting with them to just cultivate the relationship. It's not transactional in the corporate setting, although sometimes it may feel like that. Then you have, after your cultivation and then you have the meeting, you have the opportunity to discuss, not only your fundraising event that you're asking them for support, but you're going to talk to them about your nonprofit's goals and your mission. So this is the prime opportunity to then ask a number 6, may we submit a grant proposal to your corporate foundation or your company? And so that grant proposal will really be your ask in terms of how much, based on your conversation with your corporate contact, and then writing about it in a sort of proposal. The proposal could be, the format could be a covering letter, not too long, and then a corporate proposal or a case statement that can be attached. I've also seen where the format is an actual letter format, where it's addressed to the corporate contact and your ask. Don't bury the ask, it's always at the top, but then talking about and asking, making the case is in just one document. So it really is completely up to how you feel about how the corporate contact wants to receive that proposal and what their guidelines are too. Check their website if they have anything. So really it's about, number one, identifying these corporate sponsors, these corporate prospects, as we call them, cultivating the business relationships. As I mentioned, it's number 2, it's cultivating after your research, creating that value proposition. Number 3 is the proposal. As I mentioned, that's number 3. And then, make your ask, send it in the mail, email it, upload it to their system. A lot of corporations, especially the corporate foundations, have, as they use maybe third-party systems like cyber grants, etc., where you can upload your documents right away. So usually what happens is the proposal goes with your listing of board members, your 501c3 letter that goes with that package. So I've seen usually that's how it's structured, or they'll want a separate document that shows who your top 5 or 10 funders are for your organization. Not to get into the details, but sort of like sometimes that's what they ask for. As we switch here, I think first and foremost, let's revisit what I said is kind of researching. You want to build a robust pipeline. You want to identify potential corporate sponsors. You want to, kind of look at a couple different things. You want to talk to your board members first. Of course, get your executive director or CEO's buy-in. That's number one. And then, start planning. Start looking online at these 10 to 15 organizations and corporations and say, hey, is there an alignment here? Would they consider, hearing from us about a potential corporate gift? Start by looking on these companies about web pages. A lot of them have about, and then you'll see, kind of further the listing of the leadership, perhaps printing out the listing of leaders in that corporation and providing it to your development committee or your board members to kind of see if there's anyone that they could identify would be good. And then, like I said, be a sleuth. What you can do is you can say, Google, say, a Vanguard community giving or Vanguard corporate giving. That's as an example. Google will really kind of pull and, find out if they actually have a corporate giving or community giving a component to their program. If you have vendors is something that's, kind of often overlooked in this process. If you have vendors that you compensate for a service, I would say that they're fair game to call your contact at the vendor and say, hey, we have an event coming up. Would you consider supporting us? I'm laughing because I was always scouring my previous organization's vendor lists. Some of the ones that were doing so much in terms of dollar amount were the bigger corporations, like the McKesson pharmaceutical companies. And once it gets to that point where you're looking at those big companies, sometimes it takes an extra step or two to kind of see if there's mission alignment with them and you and your organization. So keep that in mind. And then Philadelphia Business Journal, for the longest time, did a book of lists. I can't confirm, I didn't have a chance to see if that's still active, but the book of lists was something that was sort of a treasure. You have to pay separately for it this day and age, but the book of lists kind of showed you like the top CEOs, the top corporations, the top companies. And so using that, it gives you not only just the listing, but it gives you like how much they made previous year. I even seen some lists that show the CEO and how much they're compensated. Not to get off topic, but I don't know if they do it now or if it's still it's probably just not even printed anymore. But look at those types of resources that may be out there. Maybe at your local chamber event, if you're involved in your local chamber event, that's another way of kind of getting in front of these folks who you meet at the chamber events and seeing if there's alignment, if it fits. So there's a lot of things you can do there, but it'll take some work to kind of start building this group of 10, 15 corporations for your organizations. But I definitely think it'll work for you. And I wanted to kind of in my notes here, I like to do the 6R rule, and that's basically this. And write this down because it's probably pretty important. Right prospect, basically the right prospect for your organization that what they're looking to fund meets with your mission. So that's number one. Number two is the right purpose, basically the alignment where the purpose fits, that your mission and then their values are fits. Number two, the right amount. You certainly want to ask high in an ask, but when you're meeting with the corporate contact, be respectful and understand how much potentially that corporation can kind of support. So the right amount. Don't go too high, but within parameters where if the corporate contact says, yeah, well, we give to nonprofits, with the highest is 10,000, go a little higher. Definitely ask high and see where things turn out after that ask. So that's the right amount. Number 4 is the right timing. A lot of corporate foundations have grant cycles and asking you to apply to them. So look on their websites and their web pages when you Google corporate foundations, corporate giving, next to that corporate name. Make sure that there's no schedule or time. There is a schedule or timing. And if not, gravy. You can submit a proposal anytime. Number 5 is the right solicitor. The right solicitor, meaning is your CEO or executive director the person that should be having this relationship with the corporation? Or is it you as a development person or volunteer? Or is it your board members? Kind of figure that out internally. So that's number 5. And then relevant factors and interests. Relevant factors and interests. Make sure it all gels together when you're ready to submit that proposal to the corporate contact who you're schmoozing. So that's really cultivating business relationships. It's looking at the alignment, business strategies, goals, having a sit down chat with someone from your organization. Perhaps it is your CEO and your executive director. And most importantly, just making sure that there's alignment there. I wanted to share with you this resource as we get to 12:32. I always like to catch myself because I drink too much coffee. This is a listing that is the most recent from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but it's a listing of the top 50 employers in Chester County. Believe me, this list does not change much over the years, the last 10 years that I've seen this list. But we have this in the slide for you to kind of use as a resource for your nonprofit. If it's in Chester County, great. If not, you could Google, if you're in Delco or Montgomery County, wherever your organization is, you can Google and find out the top 50 employers or through your local chamber. But these are the ones that are really doing some incredible work that we know, do have corporate giving programs. Some of them don't, some of them, like the hospitals or the school districts, those are sort of different types of companies. But from a top employer standpoint, you could use this list. You could use your vendor list to come up with that robust pipeline of 10, 12-ish corporate contacts. So this is on our 250 web resources web page that I'll show you in a little bit. But hopefully this is helpful to you as you start planning and fundraising and trying to have a relationship with some local corporations that are doing some good work. Slide 14 is pretty important. As I mentioned, you're building the pipeline, you're researching, you're trying to figure out what the corporation likes to fund. Well, in my experiences, it's either or. Either they have a corporate foundation, where they, let's pick on Wawa Foundation, for example. They have specific guidelines they like to support, human services, health, a number of different things. So, they also have a schedule. They have a schedule in terms of the grant cycle, when the proposals should come in, what they look for. So using them as an example, they're a corporate foundation, a separate legal entity established by the company to manage its philanthropy. There's more control over the grant making. So using Wawa Foundation as an example there, it's often structured. There's a board of that foundation of employees. So, as I said, pay attention to the guidelines there. At the same time, there's a corporate giving program, where, a company may not have a corporate foundation, but in your Google sleuthing, you could come up and say, community giving or corporate giving. 9 times out of 10, you'll find something that says corporate giving program attached to a local corporation. And this is where the company is directly involved in their charitable giving efforts. It's often tied to the president and CEO, external affairs, marketing. Even I've seen in some cases the HR office actually has sort of a function or is involved in some cases that I remember seeing. And it's tied to their volunteer efforts, their engagement, getting the employees involved. You know who does that is Xfinity, or AKA Comcast. They have a system in place. If you Google Xfinity corporate giving, they'll come up with a very fancy webpage that shows what they're interested in supporting. But knowing the person who I liaise with at the community foundation at Xfinity, the first question they ask is, when we talk about 250, is, oh, can our employees get involved? Can our employees volunteer? So that's a big green light for you guys, tying yourselves to the 250 mission to say, I wonder if Xfinity would want to have some of their employees volunteer for us. We have a lot of stuff that we need to do for our sites. So something to think about there in terms of employee volunteerism and engagement. Employer matching gifts, as I mentioned, great way to incentivize a donor and get them to maximize their philanthropy to your mission. And of course, sponsorships. Keep in mind that oftentimes corporate giving programs have two subsets. There's a corporate grants that come out of their one budget, but there's also another pool, and you often don't hear about it. But it is, as I mentioned, a marketing budget, a CEO budget that mysteriously is there as a line item, where if you have a relationship with a CEO or an executive of a company, you could certainly, be mindful that, there's a corporate grant that comes from a corporation, but there's also another pool of money that could be there for you. So keep that in mind. It's a little trick when you're having these relationships. I always keep that in mind. Very important. But I have to say, like with this top 50 employers and even the other companies that are not listed on this list, companies are very generous here in Chester County. I mean, I've been in fundraising about 18 years, and working with a lot of them through my experience, they definitely want to find ways to get involved in the nonprofit community in Chester County. So I provide that to you as assuring you that your efforts won't go in vain. If you have a finance person that says, what's the ROI? Know that it will come, but it'll take some time in terms of relationship and cultivation. So, this is sort of a value proposition for you to think about, is really kind of thinking about them first, the corporation, and what their issues and interests are, or what you heard through that lunch or breakfast with a corporate contact. But it's, what's the need to be met? Clarify, what the corporation is being asked to support, in your conversation very casually. Why is it important to the world? Why is it important to the county in terms of involving this corporation with your mission? How are we going to meet that need? If you have in that corporate proposal or your case statement, basically the why, why is it important, and how are we going to meet the need? How are we going to serve the underserved in our communities? Or, how does my historical mission and heritage mission intersect to the corporate values that are kind of outlined for you? How much will it cost? There's a cost benefit there in terms of, basically what you're seeking funding for, a program or your organization. Sometimes, maybe giving the corporation with your packet a budget, your operating budget, is very helpful for the corporate team to look at. So it's a corporate proposal, board list, 501c3, and then basically your budget, if they ask for it, but oftentimes they do, and sometimes they don't. In your conversation with the corporate contacts, sometimes if it's very in the beginning stages, sometimes you'll say, like, what's in it for me? Like, you know, how do you want us to be involved? How do we fit in with your mission? That's sort of like a green light to allow you to kind of just start sort of talking about, you know, how you see the alignment with your nonprofit's mission and then their values. Do your homework first when you meet with that corporate contact. You know, the what's in it for me as a corporate entity is it's a pretty common question. So don't be thrown off or scared by that question. It's a pretty valid one. And how will we know we've accomplished and what we aim to do? This sort of goes into the engagement or stewardship of that corporate donor. You know, they give you a sponsorship gift and they come to your gala or your fundraising event or your golf outing. How are you then communicating to this corporate contact that, you know, that your mission is successful and that the corporate entity feels like they were part of that success? A lot of times corporate foundations and corporate giving programs, the two that we mentioned here in the previous slide, sometimes they ask for a stewardship proposal, a stewardship or engagement letter asking 6 months after the gift was made, how it's going. A progress report is something that I used to work on and write. Progress report is basically, thank you so much for your, you know, $20,000 gift to X. You know, that's the lead. That's the first paragraph. It allowed us to do, and then, you know, we are pleased to provide the following progress report from the date of your gift, and then just listing, hammering it out in terms of the successes that their gift was allowed to support. So be mindful that even if they don't ask for it, I think it's still a good idea to be considered for future funding to submit a progress report or stewardship report to that corporation. Because, you know, if you receive the gift and then basically you send a thank you or acknowledgement when they come to the event and that's it, you're going to lose them. They're going to fall off your pipeline. So just make sure that you're engaging them, you're sending them communications, e-newsletters, printed materials, etc. Heck, maybe even like a breakfast or a lunch thrown in there throughout the year, just to keep the engagement going to the point where you feel like it's going well. You know, here's a cultivation meetings. You know, when you're ready, and perhaps you want to bring your CEO, your executive director with you. It's sort of having a prep meeting beforehand, before that meeting with your leader or your board member, to summarize the mission and vision and key initiatives to the corporate contact. It's kind of just, you know, kind of reiterating basically what you're going to ask that corporation for, that corporate contact. Prospects, interests, and initiatives. Make sure you do your homework basically to sort of, you know, what this cultivation meeting slide really means. And just leave with the next step. Leave with something for them to take away, all right, in your meeting. And then just, you know, reiterate next steps. Something like, you know, this has been a great meeting. Thank you so much. As I understand it, the next steps for us to do are, and then just verbally reiterate, and you'll get the green light, you'll have the respect, and that gives you the green light to start planning in terms of how you're going to ask for a contribution from that corporate entity. You know, here are the keys, you know, successful fundraising. It's compelling purpose, you know, creating that strong case for support. Often known in our work as a case statement, but a case for support could be, as I mentioned earlier, a letter format or a cover letter with another document that's the case, basically what you're asking the corporate entity to support. Specifying your goals, making sure they understand there's a clear understanding. There's a solid plan for meetings and goals and how to accomplish that. Making sure there's meaningful impact, meaningful cultivation, relationship development is a number 2 here. This will be on our website, by the way, just to be mindful of time. And, I want to make sure that you know that for those who just joined us not too long ago, in creating a corporate list, a corporate pipeline for future funding for your organization, focus on the 6 R's: right prospect, the right purpose, the right amount, the right timing, right solicitor. Who's that going to be? Is it going to be you, the CEO, and the board, or the board member, or all three of you? And then, of course, the relevant factors or interests, how it all aligns and stays together. I think that's basically how it's structured with corporate giving. The slide here, it's pretty important, is this one to show you sort of the separations when you're looking at an Xfinity or a Vanguard, all these folks that are here on this list and others, just making sure that you want to know if they have a corporate foundation or if they have a corporate giving program. So just make sure that you know where you're tracking which each of these components with your giving program. This slide really is kind of showing the timeline for Chester County 250 and the celebration of America's birthday. I mentioned earlier, I'm sure the majority, or if you all know, we're celebrating America's birthday here in Chester County 250. So we, as a community foundation, have partnered with the County of Chester government and the Regional Planning Commission to raise interest and awareness this past year, year and a half, 2 years, about this initiative in the county. And it's really to focus on our historical assets that were so part of the fabric of our country when we were founded, and even after that. And that's our role as a fiscal sponsor for Chester County 250. So I want to make time for questions, but here are some resources for you. I won't get into too much detail with these, but this is getting you to brainstorm in terms of how your cover letter is going to be addressed to the corporate contact. Putting in the messaging. Do not bury the lead or the ask in the letter. Always start with it first, and always use the word respectfully and meaningfully. Meaningful. Those types of words create sort of a tone of respect for the corporation to then say, okay, we're going to look at this proposal. So this is sort of an example of a sample letter. And what we'd like to do for the 250 initiative, I like to say recruiting your fundraising battalion team. Who's going to help you sort of engage with corporate contacts and handle the fundraising. Here's a sample case statement. As I mentioned, it's talking about your nonprofit mission, what exactly you're going to ask that corporate contact for, or that corporate entity. Showing some metrics, showing how your services as a nonprofit have increased over time. Really, it's your time to shine. Don't make it too long, but it's really showing the impactful need of the request. That's basically a case statement. It's a lot of information that's out there that you could kind of look through. This is sort of like a fundraising plan. Best practice. I just worked with a group the other day. Some of them said they don't have a development fundraising plan. I think you should. I think you should have sort of take the summer, if you don't have one, to just say, okay, my board is asking me to fundraise for, and here's the amount. How am I going to get to my goal? And then just break it out by number one, board giving. How much do I think my board members are going to give if you don't ask for a specific level gift? That's number one. And then get into like annual giving. How are you getting donors to renew their giving to your organization? That's an example. So this is an example here, a fun example with a 250 twist in terms of the financial goals of a fundraising plan, how you're going to get there. Put in corporations, put it as a section number 3 in terms of corporations, achieve X amount from 15 corporate prospects. This development plan could then be provided to your development committee of your board or your CEO. Your CEO would have buy-in on this development plan too. And so that's the concept of the development plan. It just keeps you on track Because we know that you have so many different things that you have to do throughout your, through your role with the organization. Then we have like sort of an activity sheet that shows, with your fundraising plan, you have X amount of gifts that are going to come from individuals, X amount of gifts that are going to come from corporations. Kind of put in the dollar amount that you see in a sort of a projection in terms of how much money is going to come in from that prospect or that constituency group. So kind of break it out to individuals, corporations, foundations, government grants, how much came in last year, and then maybe a projection. That's always good for your development committee and board members, full board to see. So keep that in mind. Again, don't be scared by seeing projections and money coming in from previous year. It's just part of your development fundraising efforts are going to keep you on track. So the development plan, fundraising plan is really a key for you, for your success. And then, of course, these are sort of maybe you want to create an action plan for your fundraising initiatives, like who's going to be basically keeping track of prospect lists or working with your donor database to code corporations correctly so you can pull that list and see what corporations have given to you previously, who you can add in your relationship building with local corporations and chambers. So who assigning from your team who's going to take the lead on these types of actions. All right. All online, by the way, so I won't get into too much detail. And perhaps you do some direct mail pieces, you do some postcards to donors or people that follow your organization, put that in your fundraising action step. And how are you going to measure your social media? How many followers do you have? Kind of get into more nitty-gritty stuff, and you'll be able to see that you can actually apply some measurements and tools there. And you may have seen this schedule, but we want to make sure that you're informed that the next Zoom in to make history, it's kind of understanding the overlay here with Chester County 250, fundraising, different ideas. A fun one's coming up next month, and it's foundation grants. So I sort of touched upon corporate foundations and corporate giving, but there's also foundation grants that you can apply for, and then of course ask for a grant, and then initiatives, and then you submit a progress report in terms of how you're doing with that. So that's going to be a great one, kind of tied to this Zoom session as well. We hope you can join us. Again, these serve as a resource for you to get your fundraising cap on and thinking how we can do things better, how we can look at our data, our analytics to advance our mission, whatever mission that may be. So it's a resource for you. As I stop my screen share here, I want to be able to share with you one more actual resource that I want to share with you. So bear with me as I get there. So this is our resource page. You may have seen this already, but there's resources for fundraising. And oh my gosh, as a background fundraiser, you see where this grant funding prospects list is: foundation, corporation, government. This is chock full of a listing of foundations, corporations, and government entities that you could potentially apply to. So I'll click on it so you see, but this is a treasure trove of information. I think stuff for you to have as a resource. Please do. We encourage you, but this is gold, you guys. As soon as I saw it, and I told our CEO, Karen Simmons, I'm like, oh my gosh. Please use it for your purposes with your fundraising. And let me try to get out of this. Stop share. There's one more sort of resource that I want to provide to you really quick, and it's again on that web page. Give me one sec. I'm a little rusty with my sharing, but it's here. We found a great resource initially, actually just the other day, that is from the Philanthropy Network of Greater Philadelphia. good partners of ours that really promote philanthropy just like we do in the region. This was a cool document. It's 27 pages, but it gives you, in partnership with the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, a little bit more in-depth detail in terms of how corporations give. You know, there's key findings, facts and figures to help you kind of go through, you know, why do employers give in the first place? You know, volunteerism being a thing right now, never going away. Snapshot of giving for corporate entities. This is really a treasure also. This one is particularly on page 13, showing you what issues do employers care most about. And you're going to see right here, where does your mission that you represent, a nonprofit, where do you stand in this sort of breakout? I thought this was fantastic. You know, economic community development, Chester County 250 kind of being in there. Human services, arts and culture, again, historic preservation, being in arts and culture, community development, you know, who benefits from employers' philanthropic activities. There's one more that I thought was really good and so spot on, and it was, oh shoot, where is it? It was, should have, okay, here, yes, 25. The department that oversees philanthropic activity. As I mentioned, it's usually the CEO, marketing, executive office, external affairs, sometimes HR. Here it is in terms of who is sort of the gatekeeper, who are the gatekeepers for corporate grant making at a corporation. So keep that in mind. But this is another great resource for you to kind of review and go through. So with that, we're almost at 1 o'clock, but I wanted to just, you know, take a moment to see if you all had any questions, anything coming to mind. How are you doing with fundraising efforts? Anything that we can help you with? Anything come to mind?
I do want to chime in real quick. I spent 35 plus years in corporate America on that side of the fence, and one of my responsibilities was to manage these relationships, as you put it.
Oh, look at you. Right. Tell us
I
how
just
it
want to chime in and tell everybody you are 100% accurate on everything you just said. And just to kind of chime on two things. One is there are charities that they support, either out of a sense of obligation or just to round out their portfolio, but there's always one or two that they embrace. And for those corporations that embrace these charities, that's integrated. And almost every time I see that happening, there's usually a couple of things that happen. One is somebody inside that corporation, employee, it doesn't have to be somebody of power, is volunteering, is involved, is passionately involved. And then they bring that story back to the company, to a sponsor, and say, you got to see this. This is wonderful. It's aligned with our mission. If we help them, we're helping ourselves. So you get somebody inside you to volunteer that, and also don't necessarily just think it's corporate Fortune 500. Some of these companies are very small. The other thing that you said that I 100% agree with, we always think of dollars, but the reality is they have a lot of resources, sometimes in surplus, more than they need, that they'd be happy to give away, but no one's asked them. So it could be printed material, it could be, hell, it could be a truck, you know, or in many cases, encouraging other employees to volunteer. And if you're asked, as you put it, which is so critical, is saying, listen, if we think about this together, there's probably something you can get heavily involved and not add any negative to your spreadsheet. So they can give you a lot of things that don't cost them money.
Good point. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it from somebody who sat on the other side there. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, again, we hope the Community Foundation's here as a resource. We hope this session was great for you to understand just taking past the veil there in terms of corporate giving and what that's about. How do you do it if you haven't done it before? Check out our resources that we have, as I mentioned earlier, and this presentation's up there as well. And, you know, reach out if you have questions. We'll see you at the next Chester County 250 Zoom in session next month. That's Foundation Grants. You know, Happy New Year to you all, and let's make it a good year for everyone. So thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Jason, you can stop the recording.